Welcome, everybody, to the Bassfug Podcast. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, NULL404, a.k.a. James. James is from Montreal, up the road from me, up the street. This is the closest Bassfug interview ever over the internet. And also, there is a big 4-second, 2-second delay. So you guys are going to have to get over it. It's going to be... But thank you, James, for being on the program. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Okay, first thing I want to ask, I want to ask you the big question here. Okay, Fax Machine Music. I read your bio, and I was wondering, why is this all instrumentals? Because your previous albums before that were wax tracks, kind of industrial, sort of Front 242, Skinny Puppy. But then the Fax Machine Music album, your latest album, I think it came out in November or something, a couple months ago. There's no vocals on it. So when I'm reading the biography, because I was looking into it, what's going on with this is a concept album or whatever, and I noticed that you said you wanted to switch things up because music was becoming a chore. So right off the bat, James, I want to ask you, let's explore this idea of music becoming a chore. Why was it a chore for you?
Okay, yeah. Well, actually, this album is instrumental because well, it's not even an album, but I made it in like maybe 4 to 5 days. It was just a collection of jams that I was doing that week. When I was talking about how fucking fed up I was with music, I was doing like a couple of DJ sets and gigs and stuff, and I was just getting so anxious about it, and just it was taking over my entire life, and I just forgot that music can be fun. And this project, I had nothing in mind about it. It's not even a concept. I was just making music every day just for fun for a week, and I feel like it turned out cool enough to be released. But I would not consider it an album. It's more of a fun little thing that I did, and I just felt like releasing it just for fun.
Are you worried about it being so different from the rest of the NULL404 discography? Like, why not release it under a different name?
Well, I actually thought about that, but that's funny because I was thinking to myself that I was taking myself way too fucking seriously lately, and maybe I just needed to do that to prove to myself, like, it's not that big of a deal. It's just music, it's just art, and so what if I branch out a little bit? It was kind of hard for me to get out of my comfort zone and make something that's different, but I feel like it's a step forward, and probably like future releases where I'm probably going to take a lot more risks and just not stick to what my sound is, because I don't feel like I should have the same type of sound on every album. There's a bunch of artists that change their sound every 2 or 3 albums, so yeah, I felt like might as well just put it on the same name. But I actually made a second Bandcamp for that album, which never ended up on it. So
okay, you're talking about getting out of your comfort zone. What advice can you give to other producers that are listening to get out of their comfort zone? For some people, it's easy, but for other people, I think they might be a little rigid in how they approach making music or art. What helped you get out of that comfort zone, and what did it feel like being sort of trapped and realizing that afterwards? Well,
for me, I feel like the best way I found to get out of my comfort zone is to actually get rid of my instruments that I use a lot, and my presets. And if there's this one synth that I use on 6 songs, and I just know that I can make a bass line with it, I'm just not going to use it and start, just sampling a bunch of shit and trying to make something else with it. And, just trying to add a little something different on every song, just this song has a different drum pattern or whatever, like, there's no formula to songs. And I feel like if you try to switch it up every once in a while, you just get better as an artist and feel more comfortable with your art. And
yeah, going back to the same thing is is it's a little too easy to do. Yeah, I totally agree. I for me, I remember using a lot of pirated software and stuff like 20 years ago, and I realized, it's better to just, if you come up with a limitation, then you're gonna want to be creative. So I started using free software and trying to make stuff in Linux and just trying to fuck up the process purposely so that I felt motivated to make music. So I sympathize with that.
I'm actually trying to pick up Renoise on Linux too. I'm starting to think about making songs on Renoise just to push myself out of my comfort zone. But I'm still like really unfamiliar with trackers and shit. But
no, they're the best. They're the best.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, they're terrible for some things, but they're great for other things. I think for sequencing. Getting really into the sequence, they're unparalleled. But I think at a macro level, I know that's like a stupid thing to say, but they're hard, I find, to piece together songs. So Renoise, awesome. Fellow Renoise user. Okay, let's talk about some gear, James. I noticed on your Instagram that you have a lot of gear. I think you have a Moog Mother 32. What else do you have? And why not just gear, or why not just VSTs? Why the hybrid?
Yeah, well, I actually have a DFAM, a Mother 32 on an MS-20, which I use a lot, and a bunch of rack mount guitar effects that I use for my voice. Some cheap old Roland processors. But I feel like just my creativity is way more expanded with hardware. Whereas I feel if I'm like tweaking knobs on a DAW with my mouse, it doesn't feel right, and I just have to depend on my fucking automations and stuff.
It feels like you're at work.
Yeah. When I'm playing with analog, I can just like get in my zone and tweak knobs, and it's never gonna sound the same, and I'm never gonna get that same sound unless I record it right now. So it pushes me to record everything that I do with my analog gear, which I then end up sampling and tweaking to fit it on other songs. But I feel like it just gives that organic feel that I wouldn't get if I was just placing notes on a tracker.
Yeah. With that said, I noticed I wanted to ask you some questions about, well, here, I'll save the production questions for later. I want to get more into sort of, I read that you started in 2018, and I listened to your discography, and I think you sound like someone who's been making music for longer than that. I'm curious, were you producing before under a different name? Were you musical before? Did you play in a band or something before this, or what?
Well, yeah, I used to play like with my friends in a small local band. I was actually playing bass, and I've been playing music for a while, but I don't even feel like what I'm doing right now is musical in the slightest. It's more of a rhythmic mess. But for the production side, I was producing a lot before, but I always thought it kind of sucked. And most people say like you have to make a bunch of shitty songs before you make good ones. So this project was pretty much like what happens after like the 100 shitty songs that weren't released. So yeah, I already had some kind of experience with producing, but the songs kind of suck themselves. So this may be why it feels like I had done it before in some extent.
What did you do with the previous songs? Did you save them, or did you just delete them off your hard drive?
Oh yeah, they're on the drive, but I may keep it with me unless I die or something. But the songs they're really fucking bad.
Yeah. Why do you think that you said it's not feeling musical? Because when I listen to your albums, I think to myself, oh, this is something, I don't know, maybe because I like industrial music or whatever, but it seems like something that I would naturally listen to normally.
Well, I actually agree with you. It's more, but I've heard from a lot of people that they were like, oh, it's more rhythm than music. It's more like machines having sex and like weird robot noises. But yeah, I feel like it's musical as well. But I can kind of get how it's it's hectic and it's chaotic, and
You have a song on oral reflux. It's called a brand new horror, and the lush. There's lots of lush synths in there, and there's a lot of musical aspects going on. So when I hear you saying that you don't see your music as musical, it confuses me a little bit because I find some of it very musical. But
I may be too hard on myself.
Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit. Moving on, what's it like playing live in Montreal? Because for the people listening to this podcast, we had a lot of audio difficulties, and we matched on Facebook, and I see that you aren't really connected with sort of the goth scene or the goth industrial EBM scene in Montreal. Maybe I'm incorrect. I don't know. But I'm wondering what it's like playing in Montreal as NULL404, what your experience has been.
It's been actually pretty fun, but kind of hard to set up because you know, for the audience it wasn't that much of a problem because me myself, I'm, you know, kind of a hermit. You know, I stay at home and I don't really talk to people, but I have friends that know a lot of people, so you know, it wasn't a problem reaching the scene itself, but the performing the actual shows was kind of a mess. It was fun, but it was a real mess because you know, most of these tracks have like 50 to 60 tracks in them, you know, and a bunch of textures and drums and shit, and we were only like 2 to 3 on the stage, which makes it really fucking hard to do, especially when I'm not playing any instruments when I'm playing live. So, you know, it was kind of hard to coordinate, and we only practiced for like a week, but it still works. You just have to kind of pre-plan a lot of shit, and you know you have your keyboard on stage, which you think is gonna be for playing that musical part, but it's more like triggering a bunch of samples, you know.
I guess maybe I should rephrase my question because, well, that's good to hear as well. But I'm also curious because it seems like you're an outsider in the Montreal industrial scene. Is that true?
Yeah, I feel like I am. Yeah.
Our last episode, 2 episodes ago, we interviewed Nathan, DJ Na, and he runs Amp Productions, and he got Navek Ogre to play at Foofs and stuff. I'm gonna link you guys together because he would love to book you for sure.
That would be great, man.
Yeah.
I would love that.
I'm curious, is Turbo Haas the only place you're playing at, or are there other venues you're playing at?
Well, we actually played a couple more times in other cities and other places, but nice. The thing is, when I released the first album, I got a couple of my really good friends that I know, like they would learn the songs and just play with me for the fuck of it, you know, just for fun. And when we really started to nail the songs and trying to find a couple of venues, you know, COVID just hit. So right now it's playing shows. It's kind of a mess.
Yeah. What's
I would really love to get back to it right now because I have like a lot more music than when I started playing the shows. You know, I only had 8 songs, so they were like 30-minute sets.
Yeah.
It would be right now.
I don't want to keep talking about COVID on this podcast, but it's like, because like every episode we're talking about COVID, but in what's the elevator pitch of how COVID has sort of affected you as a producer? And I know lockdown in Quebec's been a little silly, and I think we're going to go back and do it again. That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
How is even buying gear, like 2-person limit to go to Moog Audio? It's like, what the fuck? I just need a MIDI cable, you know? How has that affected you know what I mean? How has it affected your whole process?
Well, I'm gonna get to that point. Speaking of buying fucking Moogs during COVID, I had to wait for 2 hours, like freezing my ass off next to the store just to buy my DFAM. There were only like maybe four people in there, but they were just taking their time. It was terrible, man.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like my entire second album was made by isolation and the lockdown, and you know, it. Looking back on it, it feels, I don't know, the production feels almost kind of dreamy and isolated, and the mixes are kind of cloudy. And I probably spent like 8 months inside, just just like smoking weed and playing with knobs. So it feels like I was just lost in my head during all this time, which
Living
made
the
this
dream.
album sound. Yeah, well, yeah, you could say that, but yeah, I mean, I feel like this album maybe wouldn't have existed or would have been totally fucking different if it wasn't for the pandemic. Because at first I wanted to do a 180 and just make a super synth pop album just for fun. And this is actually when I made Brand New Horror, which was one of the first songs in the production cycle. But then I just ended up alone for like 8 months, and I just picked some of the hundreds of songs that I made during this time. Yeah.
Let's talk about EBM and industrial music. Was that always your inspiration? Is that something you always listen to? Or because I see, you have a lot of Aphex Twin iconography on your profile. I'm wondering. I don't usually ask people about their influences because it's like I ask a lot of softball questions on this show, but like asking about influences is really softball. But I'm kind of curious about how long have you been into industrial music, or has it been your whole life, or is this sort of a new fascination? And how does that coincide with, say, Aphex Twin?
Oh, well, industrial as a whole has been like it's been a part of my life for as long as I can remember, since my parents were actually like way into KMFDM and Nine Inch Nails and all that stuff. So
really?
When I was young, I would hear that like while I was shitting my pants, So when I got to my teenage years and I was hearing like Symbols by KMFDM or some shit, I was just getting like insane flashbacks. So I always had an attraction toward that type of music, but my real when I fell in love with synths was way more with IDM and what I heard out of like stuff in Warp Records and shit like that. I don't want to go too much into like what are my influences and
No, that's fine. That's fine. You have full permission. You could go if you want.
I feel like my actual love for music was came from like ambient and music with a lot of textures and modular bleep loops and all that shit. But I just feel like I have way more fun messing around with a sampler and making a lot of noise.
Awesome. It was funny. We interviewed Sir Vix a year ago, and his uncle is Lee Popa, who used to hang out with a lot of the Wax Tracks guys, and he did like KMFDM remixes and stuff.
Oh,
and in the interview, he talks about how his uncle just showed him and got him into making music and stuff like that. That's pretty cool. Trial by fire there. I got to plug past shows. We got to get these podcast downloads up. Let's talk about mixing vocals, because I hear like the Navek Ogre influence, but I also hear some Frontline Assembly, the classics, the greats. I'm curious what your vocal effect chain is, and if you want to sort of talk about the way to make a good EBM vocal.
Oh shit. My vocal effect chain is actually the biggest mess ever, because I'm usually like, I'm fine and I'm comfortable with myself, but when I have to like isolate my own vocal tracks, I just get like crazy anxious and shit. So I start putting EQs, compressors, reverbs, filters, more chorus, distortion, like until I kind of feel comfortable with my own voice. So there's probably like fucking 12 effects on every voice track. But it's mostly filters and distortion. I usually use my my Roland GP8, which is a guitar effect processor, and I just put some metal guitar effect or whatever the fuck it is, and just put my voice in it.
I guess while we're on the subject, how about general mixing and or I guess specifically your drum sequencing? Because I know with a lot of industrial music, there's a particular drum sound, and I'm curious if there's like a go-to drum machine sample pack that you like to use. If it's, I think, what's the one that everybody uses, the RX-8 or the Kawai, whatever it is.
Yeah. I am using the Kawai a lot, but I've been trying to avoid it recently because I feel like, you know, that fucking orchestra sample, you know, you've heard it a million times, and
Yeah.
you know,
It's like a Full Metal Jacket sample.
yeah. You know, we've heard it so many times that it's cool, you know, if you're trying to make an industrial cliche song just for fun, but when you're trying to, you know, go out of the box or something, sometimes I actually have a drive with, I think it's like 100 gigabytes of just drum samples. I don't know where I found that, but when I'm starting new projects, sometimes I just randomly pick one and go from there. You know, even if I don't like the samples, I'm just gonna try to tweak them a little bit until it starts sounding like something I like. But usually I would go with Fairlight samples, or, you know, just straight up playing with my DFAM. But I'm trying to switch things up a little bit because, you know, like I was telling you earlier, you know, you have to kind of change your sound every time, even if you're not changing genres and shit.
When you are singing, do you find you use your voice as an instrument, or do you find you use your vocals as sort of a way to keep the continuity of a particular sound that you're going for?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I feel like it really depends on the energy of the song, but I almost use my voice as a tool to the rhythmic parts. You know, I'm mostly going to put my vocals on the impacts of the kicks and the snares or whatever weird percussion is on the background. It's more going to be on the bass lines or the percussions. I don't really sing on the melodic parts, so it could still be considered an instrument in some ways, but it's almost more like percussive, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I guess, like, on that note, can we talk about you were talking about the Roland stuff. I kind of want to swing back to this. Do you find that it's better to use hardware when you're, or is it better to use VSTs, especially when it comes to the vocals? You said you have a complex vocal chain. And I've had similar sort of effects chains, and I realize, you know, if I just go to a pawn shop and get like one of those guitar, you know, things from 1992 for like $80, they do a lot to the voice as well. I'm curious, do you find that the hardware does a good job with vocals, or do you prefer sticking with the VSTs?
Well, actually, I don't even own any VST because I'm still stuck with an old shitty version of Reason. Okay. So I don't even think it supports VSTs. But I don't know if it's necessarily better, since most of these old processors have a bunch of noise if you don't like have some kind of if you don't have something to ground it, you know, it can get kind of messy. But as I was talking about earlier, I just feel like I'm way more inspired if I'm tweaking knobs than if I'm just testing presets on a fucking DAW or whatever. So it would probably be better from a professional standpoint to use VSTs or whatever. But if I'm just trying to be creative and, you know, yeah, if you're just trying to go for something new or just explore your sound, I think it's pretty cool to use, like, you know, this old shitty machine that has a bunch of noise in it. Especially if you're playing in a genre like this, I don't think it matters that much.
Yeah. Going to the being creative that you just mentioned, for anybody who's listening, and like I said, we have like a lot of people listening that aren't really ready to make the jump to doing creative projects, and I really want to push people to, you know, express themselves. I think that's the one thing we're missing in the 21st century. Everything is too literal. Everything is a fucking tweet or a meme, you know, and we don't really have any great albums anymore that say anything that sort of reflect
I agree, man.
people's struggle, right? I'm curious, Like, when was the last time you heard an album like Too Dark Park, or any of these great albums? I'm curious. Can you give any advice for someone to be creative, and how do they even start being creative? Because earlier you talked about getting out of your box was limiting your options, but how do you even start? Like, what would you recommend to someone like a 17-year-old who just wants to start? What would you tell them?
Yeah, that's a tough one. But if we're talking about, what I would say to maybe, for example, my 17-year-old self, I would tell myself, not to force art or whatever creative fucker you're doing, because you could spend like hours just trying to make something good or just something decent, and sometimes it just doesn't come out. And if you're getting frustrated by this and quitting, you're fucking up. You can just like in your everyday life just think about artsy shit on the back of your mind, and at some point it just clicks, and you just have to like leave work early and run to your studio because you have this idea. Like, some of my bass lines just appeared in my dreams while I was sleeping, and I woke up and I just had to like hum them on my phone, or some weird stuff like that. Sometimes it just comes, and you have to like seize that moment, because I think forcing art is not ever gonna work. It's kind of shitty.
Yeah, and it takes the fun out of it. And if there's no fun, then you aren't gonna be creative. Man. Yeah, that's interesting that you're getting bass lines in your dreams. That's the first time I've ever really heard that on the show. Don't force art. That is some good advice. Let's move on to something that's, I think I agree with. We align with. Your Instagram bio says, "I hate having to be here to stay relevant." And I really relate to that, man. Like, I was an internet Luddite. Like, in the MySpace era, I was going hard, but then I gave up. I just hated the internet. I
read about that.
Web 1.0 is great. Web 2.0 was a mistake. But I can't get any exposure for this podcast if I'm not constantly putting out stupid little clips every 5 days. I'm curious if you wanted to talk about that and how you feel.
Well, yeah, talking about that, Web 2.0, it's, I feel like, especially if you're trying to promote art, like if you're looking at an Instagram page or a Facebook page, like, except for a fucking banner, there's nothing you can like customize or personalize. It's so like it's so bland, and there's something missing.
And corporate.
I feel like that. Yeah. The MySpace era didn't have that. You could just like put a fucking song when you were loading your page, or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I don't really enjoy using social media except like for sharing memes when I'm too stoned. But you kind of have to do it as an artist, because how else are you gonna like promote whatever you're doing? Like, are you gonna make an ad in a fucking newspaper? Like, nobody's gonna watch that.
Yeah, no one even reads newspapers anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's sort of, I want to explore this a little bit. Let's talk about promoting, and we could keep the social media talk in there too. How have you been promoting your brand? And as someone who doesn't like using Instagram besides memes, I have nothing against memes. I know I was talking shit about memes 20 minutes ago. That's not what I mean. I meant expression being too literal. Everything's just a tweet. All outrage is like a 128 character sentiment. It's not a song. Yeah. It's not a piece of art, and I feel, anyways.
I know. I totally get that.
How do you promote? How did you start promoting your music? Did you just share it with friends or what? Was it all about the hashtags?
Well, actually, I'm pretty terrible at promoting myself. So I've been kind of lucky to have a few friends that have a bunch of friends, especially like in the local scenes and in Montreal, So, but I'm gonna be in a bar, and my friend's gonna DJ, and it's gonna be one of my songs playing, and I'm probably not even gonna talk to people about like, this is my song playing, unless I'm like really fucked up. So yeah. I don't really promote. I always feel kind of dirty about doing it, because when somebody just doesn't talk to you for for a couple of months and just tells you like, oh, listen to this, listen to that,
Yeah.
and you're like, what the fuck, Yeah.
But what else are you supposed to
still
do?
have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. You have to do it or else. But I don't know. It really depends if you're making music for yourself. But even if you are, you would like people to give you feedback and hear it. So this is kind of hard, especially in a time where people don't depend on labels as much as they used to. So if you go on Bandcamp, like there's just 100 albums being sold every second, and the market is really huge, even if you're like in a small niche scene, So I don't know, man. You just have to annoy your friends and send them links.
I don't even know if people like music the same way they did 20 years ago.
I don't know.
I know it sounds like a boomer ass thing to say, because obviously people are listening to music. We have TikTok and people are dancing to songs and stuff. But I don't know. It's just weird. I just feel like there is so much more competition. Like there's all these fucking Marvel movies and Star Wars reboots and shit taking people's time. And it's like, I don't know if people just sit in their room and listen to an album anymore.
Well, I get what you're saying. Like, yeah, of course, what you just said sounded boomer as fuck. But at the same time, it's also kind of right because, there's so much music right now that's being accessible and available. And you don't have to go out of your way to buy an album and, like flip through the little pages and shit.
Yeah.
You can just stream like 1,000 songs in 5 minutes. And if you don't like the first 10 seconds, well, time's up. And, when you're making music nowadays, you have to take that in mind when you're making your track list or whatever is the intro of your song. You got to think about, like, do you want to keep it artsy and make a long intro, or do you not want to risk that people are going to listen to 10 seconds and just change songs?
Yeah.
So promotion as a whole kind of sucks in my opinion, but you just have to do it.
But at the same time, I feel almost the opposite. It's like, well, fuck, if someone doesn't have 15 seconds to listen to my music, then fuck them. I don't care if nobody listens to the music. I'll just make it. I'll put it on the internet. And when I die and aliens, go through the hard drives of the internet, maybe some AI is going to find my music and something will happen, or maybe not. I don't know. It makes you question why it is that you're using art in the first place. And if you're using it, as a vehicle to become popular, or are you using it as a vehicle of expression or exploring your own emotional landscape, or what? I don't have the answer.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, when you have like your insights on platforms like Bandcamp or shit like that, you can see like how many of your plays are partial skips or complete plays, aside from the number. And when you have this one song that you've worked like 10 times more than the rest of the album, which has like this weird intro, whatever the fuck it is, and like half of your plays are, partial, at some point you gotta ask yourself, like, am I still making music for myself, or do you want to not really be accessible, but like you still want people to listen to your shit. So,
but doesn't that put you in doesn't that put you in a trap where it's like you got to make every song catchy and it's got to stick, and doesn't that just turn you into pop music?
Yeah, but you see, that's actually why I released the latest project, because I was kind of sick of thinking this way, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna release whatever the fuck I'm doing in 5 days. And I just felt like I needed to have more of a almost like punk-ish attitude to the way I was looking at the entire project, and we were talking about that earlier. This is exactly why I made it. I just wanted to release whatever the fuck was coming out, and this was it.
Yeah. I remember back in my MySpace days or whatever, talking about being a boomer, I remember I was always making breakcore, and I was getting 1,700 plays a day. I was getting DMs and shit. It was crazy. And when I top 10 in the MySpace electronic music in Canada, all this stuff for making one genre of music. and I was getting sick of it, honestly. Like I wanted to do something else, but you can't, because if you make something else,
you're gonna lose your place, man.
You're gonna lose your place. But then in the long run, you realize that you are even just riding a meme anyways. It'd be like if you're a Doge meme page, or if you're I don't know, whatever fucking meme, you're my pondering my orb meme page. You know, are you gonna be doing that same meme in a year or two? Right? So it's like you're already doomed to fail from the get-go if you're trying to please a particular audience that likes a style. You get what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't know, it's fucked up. It's a weird tightrope to be on. It's like, well, I could have one project for one style of music, or I could use this one project to explore.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the thing, because when you, especially like with smaller scenes, you know, if you have this band that does this genre of music, and you know, most of these smaller subcultures, you know, there's a bunch of elitism shit, and if you want to make another project, you know, that would be the way to go. But I feel like you could take I feel like the better approach is just to change your genre to whatever the fuck you want to do as your band. You know, it feels less like as if you're trying to please somebody, or just stay relevant.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, after all, it's art, and this is what you want to do.
No, I agree with the staying relevant thing. But at the same time, as a music listener, let's say you're listening to, I don't know, you really like Metallica, and then, you know, they release Ride the Lightning, and you're like, this is great. And then they release Injustice for All, and you're like, it's okay, it's pretty good, or Master of Puppets. But then they release, you know, Saint Anger, or one of these albums that everybody hates. And it's like when you're going through an artist,
I thought it was all right, man.
Oh man, I honestly I like the new Metallica Death Magnetic. It's not too bad. But anyways, look, the point I'm trying to make is, like, you listen to a band, and then when they switch it up too much, doesn't it bother you? Like Nine Inch Nails is another one. Like, man, don't you just want them to release Downward Spiral too? Like, it's been downhill since The Fragile, in my opinion.
I don't. I mean, The Fragile is probably my favorite one. But if we're going on that subject, I feel like if the band was to go back to a more industrial sound, it would probably sound, you know, like a
cliche.
You know, no, but like these classic movies, you know, like when there's a fucking Star Wars reboot or whatever, and just
New
it's
Matrix.
a bunch of like the new Matrix. You know, it's just a bunch of callbacks to what made it great, but it's not necessarily what it is, because everything around that aesthetic changed. You know, so what if you're gonna make music and wear trench coats and leather jackets again? You know, it's not gonna have the same effect. Like I don't think it would be great if Trent was to make Downward Spiral again. Honestly,
that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that, but you're 1,000% right.
I still like the new shit though, but you know, it's not the same band at this point. They should have changed names. You know, it's kind of contradictory to what we were talking about, because this is really what Trent does. You know, he does whatever the fuck he wants, but at this point, it's more of an ambient, you know, cinematic type thing. You know, I feel like there are lengths to like how much you can change before it's actually a totally different project. But you know, just switching up genres once in a while, I think that's cool. You know, Bowie did that a lot. You know, all of the albums are different.
Yeah, but with Bowie, it was like that was his gimmick. Like, he was constantly reinventing himself, kind of like Madonna. Like, no one's gonna get mad at Madonna because she's not doing like a Virgin or something like that, you know. But with Nine Inch Nails, it was like, oh, I know what I'm getting. Like, you know that it's different, but there was an emotion that you knew you were gonna get when you listened to it. And then he just kind of, I don't know, was experimenting more with like Queens of the Stone Age kind of rock. And not that there's anything wrong with that or whatever, but yeah, Nine Inch Nails was one for me that I kind of was like, damn it, like, just keep doing the same thing. But moving along, I'll change the subject a little bit. Let's talk about collaborating. Speaking of, you know, Nine Inch Nails, they collaborated with Dave Grohl. They collaborated with tons of other musicians. How do you feel about collaborating with other musicians?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually totally open with that. I was working on I am working on a couple of remixes right now, and when we send each other back and forth stems and shit, I'm always like, maybe we should do a song together or whatever. Like it just hasn't happened yet on my project, but at some point, I just feel like anybody that I could connect with in the studio can be in a song, or just I'm not saying like it's some kind of a open super band, whatever the fuck you want to call it, but it's not a one-man band as well. I would be open to collaborate with anybody that has something interesting to bring.
Do you find it's difficult working in different DAWs and just sending stems back and forth, or because some people don't use renoise? Renoise to some people is like a nuclear reactor,
Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm not a professional person, not at all, like in any aspect of my life, except like when you're actually working on a session that you're going to share, at least you're going to make sure to label your fucking tracks and, cut out all the noise. And I mean, if you're working with somebody that actually knows how to work a DAW, I think it's fine. But, it doesn't always happen.
Yeah. How about the other way around, electronic music to replace sort of humans? I know that you were saying that you were talking about you were in a band before. When you discover that you could just make music by yourself, isn't that relieving? Like, was that something that you liked, or did you miss sort of the going to the practice room kind of aspect?
Well, I was doing both at the same time, but I actually started making music by myself because of creative differences. I just felt like half the time I was like, I don't know where this is going. It's cool, but I wouldn't have done it that way. At some point, I was just like, I have my fucking DAW at home. I might as well just make it my own side project. But like I was telling you earlier, for years it was like maybe like 400 shitty songs that are locked in the hard drive somewhere, until I made like a couple of good ones and then started this project like probably like 3 years ago now. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
But it was more like the feeling of working with yourself. It kind of changed the whole game for me, because there's nobody that's gonna say like, I don't know if this is good or not. And at some point, it can be like
my solo isn't long enough.
yeah, but at this point I felt like I needed that, just nobody telling me if this is good or not, and just discovering it by myself by releasing it. And if everybody tells me it sucks, then maybe I'm delusional, I don't know, but yeah, it felt good.
James, we're at the end of our interview time. I appreciate your time. This has been great and lots of good information here. I was wondering, where can people find you online? What are your social links?
Well, you can find my Bandcamp at null404.bandcamp.com, or follow me on Instagram at @fuckjmz. And it's been a pleasure being here, man. Thanks a lot.
No problem. I just have one last question I want to ask before we go, as a send off. How do you feel about Reason? Why did you choose Reason?
Yeah, go ahead.
And are there other DAWs that you have your eye on?
I mix my songs with a shitty demo version of Studio One, but I composed them on Reason, and it's actually only because that was the first one I ever touched, so I felt comfortable with it. But it's got a bunch of its little quirks and issues and shit, but it's really more a matter of like me being comfortable with it. But for mixing, I feel like it really doesn't work. So I would use something like a Reaper, Pro Tools, or whatever. But I just had this demo disc of a Studio One, and I'm that lazy, so I've been using it for like maybe 5 years now.
Awesome. So use what you got.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, James. I'll talk to you after. I'm just going to end the show. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
All right, cool, man.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
This program was brought to you by the superwill64.com Entertainment Network. For more great shows, podcasts, and music, please visit superwill64.com.